The History of Curb Your Enthusiasm, Season 1, Episode 1. My thoughts coming up right after this. Hey everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. So grateful to have you. I'm Yoel, and in today's video, I'm going to pick up where I left off from the previous video, which is discussing my thoughts and reflections to the fantastic new video series, The History of Curb Your Enthusiasm, starring Susie, Essman, and Jeffrey Garlin. And in today's video, I'm going to discuss Season 1, Episode 1, The Pants Tent. And essentially, I'm discussing their discussion of Curb. And see my previous videos for more on the purposes of my videos and what I'm adding to the mix, or at least hope to add to the mix. And I'm going to jump right in. Now, I did talk in my last video about the Curb Your Enthusiasm theme song, the obvious bum, 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 ba-na-na-na, which is called Frolic. And again, Jeff and Susie referenced it again in this video. And I found it interesting also that Susie said that when you hear that music, it just gets you into that Curb mindset, which is exactly what I had talked about in the last video. So glad to see that that sort of validation of what I was saying in the previous video from an actual actor in the series. And something else that's funny, I noticed kind of offhand, the episode obviously is involving Larry David's pants forming into a tent, you know, like when the pants bunch up around the crotch area of a man. And of course, Larry David makes a whole episode about it and what transpires as a result. And Susie in the video says right up front, and she didn't mean it, but it was kind of a double entendre for anybody who's paying attention. Just wanted to throw that in there. I found it funny that she introduced the episode by saying right up front without even intending it. And the next thing I have jotted down here is that, yes, they're discussing the idea of the pants tent. You know, Susie, you know, being a female, obviously says, like, does anybody even notice that? Nobody notices that. And then Jeff right away is like, no, we all notice it. And what's unspoken here is that we all notice it, but nobody says anything about it. Nobody does anything about it. Larry David actually verbalizes. This is what I keep saying about the beauty and genius of Curb Your Enthusiasm. He verbalizes and puts into action those kind of deep, dark thoughts that we all have, but nobody actually says out loud. So I definitely, as a man, tend to notice when there's like a bunch up around the pants, particularly if you're wearing cotton pants, which I haven't done in many years. Now I wear jeans, which is fortunately for you guys off the screen. I am wearing pants. I'm not in my underwear here. But definitely all guys, I shouldn't say all, but I'm sure most guys do notice, as Jeff was saying, the pants tent. But to actually call it the pants tent and turn it into a whole episode surrounding that is just pure Larry David genius. And something else that struck me, they were talking about the idea of Larry's on-screen wife, Cheryl Hines, played by Cheryl David, volunteering Larry to go with her friend, played by Mike Myers' ex-wife, Robin, I'm forgetting her last name, who indeed did a very superb job, you know, keeping up with Larry David in the scenes. And but in the show anyways, Cheryl David tells Larry to go with her friend. And they were saying how in real life, a wife wouldn't necessarily volunteer her husband so quickly. And I feel a lot of that has to do with the fact of who Larry David is, because I used to say back when I was married as well, now I'm not, but I used to say at the time to my then wife, my wife of yore, as Jeff refers to his ex-wife. Where does that come from, by the way, wife of yore? But anyway, I used to say to my wife of yore that, you know, the reason why you're not, you don't have any problems with me hanging out with any of your friends, not that I really did, but if I did, or if I ever did or said anything around women, I would always say, I'm so not a threat to you. And that's not a compliment looking back. That just shows where I was at the time and how my wife of yore had viewed me in terms of my masculinity. But that's a whole other discussion. And grateful I can kind of look back on that with a new lens. But the point is that if a wife doesn't feel that her husband's any threat, that's what I would say, that then she'll have no problem volunteering her friend to go with her husband. And that's what happens with Larry David. He's viewed as such a non-threat to her that she's willing to volunteer her friend. Of course, that does turn into an issue. Then Cheryl does start to see that maybe Larry is more of a threat than she thought. But initially, the reason why I would say she volunteered her friend to go with Larry is because she did not view Larry as any sort of threat. And rightly so. I don't think any of us would actually think that Larry would actually act on any of these kind of impulses. Okay. And the next episode, we're going to talk about his crush, if you will, on Mary Steenburgen and what plays out over there. But whether or not Larry would ever act on anything, likely not. Okay. And these kinds of themes, by the way, do play out, as you know, if you're, well, you are, if you're watching this a Curb fan, these do play out in future episodes as well. But we'll leave that for the next installments of the history of Curb Your Enthusiasm. When they talk about it, then I'll talk about it as well. Now, something else, Richard Lewis is introduced, I think for the first, yeah, it must be for the first time. It's the first episode. And they're hilarious together, Richard and Larry David from the get-go. Just a beautiful addition to the cast. And it's great to be introduced to him so early on. I think that's a big part of the reason for the success of Curb Your Enthusiasm, that chemistry between Richard Lewis and Larry David. And it was funny, they talked about the idea of Richard Lewis, when that great line that Larry David had when Richard Lewis and Larry are having that first argument, and Richard says, "You better be there by sundown." And Larry David is like, "What are we in a Western over here? Gary Cooper?" I don't remember the name of the actor, but what are we in, some Western? Meet me by sundown. And Richard Lewis is like, "That's funny. That's making me laugh, but you better be there." And I bet you in real life, Larry had ad hoc that line, and Richard was probably really laughing. So just that chemistry and actual humor and authenticity, as I keep talking about, which is so part of the Curb Your Enthusiasm theme and what makes it so successful, is really getting going in the very early on when you're watching Larry David and Richard Lewis's character interact. And something else that they talked about was the idea of the fact that Jeffrey was saying that in the scene when Cheryl's friend is rubbing Larry's arm, which results in the non-erection erection, if you will. And Jeff is like, she kind of rubbed it a little bit more than was necessary. And it goes to show you details matter. Okay. So there could be different types of rubbing of an arm. There could be like a gentle rubbing of the arm, or there could be like a more intense rubbing of the arm. And I do remember watching that episode and thinking that as well. Like, I could see maybe a wife's, somebody's wife's friend, maybe giving somebody a gentle tap or a playful tap on the shoulder, but a rub is a bit extreme, I would say. Maybe I sound like a prude, but that's the way I see it. And the way she was rubbing his arm was really exaggerated. So I agree with Jeff on that one. It goes to show you that details matter. The way in which she was rubbing his arm ended up making a big difference in the episode and as the plot plays out. Now, yeah, something that was interesting as well is that Susie was talking about how she ended up joining the show. And what happened was Larry David had reached out to her in his kind of nonchalant way. He hadn't spoken to her in many years. And all of a sudden he calls out and says it's LD. And it was interesting. She said that he didn't try and sell her at all. He's just like, "Oh, yeah, I got the show. You'd be great in it." And she's like, "Well, what's it involved?" "No, there's no, let me see the script. There's no script. And you're not going to be paid anything. And you got to find your own way and find your own lodging, et cetera, which is so typical vintage Larry David, authentic, genuine. He's not trying to sell her. He's not pretending. He's not trying to tell her, "Oh, it's going to be great. We're going to go into syndication. You're going to make tons of money. It's worth it, even if you sacrifice in the short term." None of that. He's just like, "Come join the show." And Larry David is such a magnetic personality that it works. She ended up actually counting on him. Now, of course, he had the Seinfeld success behind him, so that definitely gives street cred. But I think just by nature of who Larry David is, if he comes out and asks somebody to come join him on something, people just want to be around him, and they're willing to do that. And Susie Essman made the right decision to join the show, even on Larry David's non-sales pitch for her to join the show. And again, how right was he to cast her? Again, his talent is genius for spotting talent, as I keep talking about as well. Yeah, something that really struck me is that Jeff is talking with Susie how they would definitely in the initial going, and I would argue probably throughout the whole series, they would do what makes them laugh because they were always laughing. I talked about that before. And that really struck me because what I try and do with my videos is to do whatever interests me. In fact, that's my tagline now. By the time you're watching this, maybe that will have changed, but I really like it. My tagline is stuff that I enjoy or stuff that I like. And that's what I'm trying to do here. And I really find that as you do that, then if you actually look out for what you like, you're going to not only be more authentic and true to yourself, but you'll actually enjoy what you're doing and you're more likely to be successful in that. So really it's the early goings of my YouTube channel. I have faith in myself and I have faith in this channel. And that's really what I'm trying to do. So I was really inspired to hear and see Jeff talking with Susie about that idea. They were just doing what made them laugh. and look how successful they ended up becoming. So you really got to be true to yourself and not try to pander to audiences or move away from who you really are. You have to really, really be authentic. I keep using that word over and over again, almost as much as Jeff says, by the way. But I really believe in that. And it inspires me to hear them talking about how they did what they love and they did what makes them laugh. And that's what I try to do here with this video as well. Just talk about different topics and ideas, whatever I personally enjoy. So that got me feeling inspired. Now, something else that struck me, I do remember the character of Jeff's dad, played by Louis Nye, who I hadn't heard of, I have to profess, before the show and before watching the history of Curb Your Enthusiasm, which is another reason why I love this podcast and video series so much, is because I'm learning that much more about the show. I'm getting in the deep dives. And I do remember when he says to Larry David, when Larry David's apologizing profusely, which, as they talk about, is does become a theme very early on in Curb. He's like, it was rotten. It was rotten. And it was funny to hear Jeff's talking about that, because that's what I remember as standing out when I watched the episode, just how funny it was to hear him say that. So Jeff kind of reminded us of that line when he did that. And also this, I didn't know that Louis Nye had actually improvised this line when they're sitting around in the restaurant and they're ordering. And it was not actually on the menu for the script. Again, there's no script, but it was not called for to say the line that he said. Louis Nye ended up ordering the fish frenzy. And actually, Jeff didn't talk about this, but when they showed the clip, I'm pretty sure you can see Jeff starting to break into laughter, and the video cuts away from him. They always talk about the video, the show cutting away from Larry when he's about to laugh. But I think I saw like a slight grin forming on Jeff's face. And it really is funny to hear Louis Nye saying the fish frenzy. And I can understand even more if it wasn't even a line that was actually scripted for by Larry David. So just funny to watch that. And something else that struck me is that in such typical Curb fashion, what is the scene? They're sitting around ordering from the menu. They're doing it's really a continuation of Seinfeld, where it's a show about nothing. In Curb, they're doing nothing. They're ordering on a menu. It's so benign. It's so nothing. And even that's the genius of Larry David. It's not even the words that they say, although again, the fish frenzy and rotten were funny words, but it's more the whole scene of what's going on, just the uncomfortability. Larry, after offending Jeff's parents, they're sitting around at a dinner table and it's uncomfortable and they're ordering and Larry's annoyed and he's flustered, and it's just the way the camera's focusing in on their faces. And it's a slice of life, but it's a slice of maybe sort of surreal life, or the type of life's events that don't really transpire because we don't act on our impulses like Larry David does. But that is the genius of Curb, being able to turn a very mundane activity such as ordering from a menu in a restaurant and making it hilarious. So those are some of my thoughts on the thoughts of Jeff and Susie on the episode of Curb, season 1, episode 1 of the Pants Tent. Of course, there's so much more I could get into. I actually plan in the future to start rewatching the episodes just like Jeff and Susie do. I do think that will enrich the thoughts that I'm providing here. Right now, I've only had time to watch. I have rewatched Curb many times, but currently, as I do these videos, my time has been somewhat limited. But I've been sticking to, kind of giving my feedback on the feedback that Jeff and Susie are doing. But I do plan on rewatching the episodes, because there's so much more I could probably go into just on my own personal insights as a fan on the show themselves. But these are some of the things that I kind of cherry picked from what Jeff and Susie were discussing. And as always, I'm curious about your thoughts. What do you think about my insights? What do you think about Jeff and Susie's? What do you think about the episode itself at the Pants Tent? What do you have to add? I'd love to see your feedback. It's always great to see what other Curb fans have to say. And of course, if you would be so kind as to like this video and to subscribe to my channel, you'll be helping me, and you'll also be helping yourself to not miss a further episode. That's going to be in my end screen as well. And as always, I am very grateful that you joined me, and I look forward to seeing you at the next video. Hey everyone, hope you enjoyed that video. I'd be grateful if you subscribe to the channel. You'd not only be helping me, you'd also be helping yourself to not miss a future video. Your comments and feedback are always welcome, and don't forget to hit the actual like button on the video as well. Looking forward to seeing you at the next one.